Welcome back, folks, for not exactly a leak video per se, because there's no new stuff physically that's coming out pretty soon. Now, unphysically, or not physically, theoretically, the new motion physics will be tested pretty soon, and that's the upcoming new stuff. So with that, you can turn your tanks onto the roof, or you can flip them over, or you can have crazy rams and you can flip each other over, and you can do like a Tokyo drift on one track of your tank. So pretty crazy stuff, but I cannot show you these crazy motions and physics because I need to have video, and talking about them without having physical stuff is pointless. So yeah, we'll wait for that. But for now, the North American servers just got updated to the 9.6 patch yesterday, and with that, Tank Inspector also gets updated because it points to World of Tanks directories. So now we have 4 new models in Tank Inspector, so we can play around with the stats of the FV4202 at tier 8, the IS-5, the T-54 model 1945, and the Sherman Improved. So this video will be a more scientific analysis between the comparisons I made for the leak videos of these tanks. So now I have actual stats and actual comparisons. But if you already know the comparisons I already made for my leak videos, you are welcome to skip it because it's mostly a rehash or scientific rehash with more details. So click on the pictures or icons if you want to skip to any one of them. But for now, I'll go through the comparisons between the FV4202 at tier 8 with the Centurion Mark 1 because both tanks are pretty much the same. Same hull armor. Hull armor is crap. Turret armor is pretty decent. And the gun is the 20 pounder. So that's the comparison. We'll compare the IS-5 with the IS-6 because the tier 8 premium tanks and Russian. So why not? Also both have very good armor. The IS-5 got buffed to 220mm penetration with a modified D25T 122mm. So now it will face tier 10s, but it's actually pretty good, decent. And we'll compare the T-54 model 1945 with the Type 59 because that's the original assessment I made. We'll also compare the Sherman Improved with the Sherman, and we'll compare the Hotchkiss H35 with the Panzer Kampfwagen 35H, which is the German captured H35. And we'll compare the stats of these two mouses at tier 2 with the new introduction of the Renault R35 that I mentioned yesterday. So this video will be more of a scientific analysis and comparisons, so you're free to skip it if you want, but it's mostly nerdy and stats and statistics and other stuff. So here we go. And here we have the FV4202 as a premium at tier 8 with the FV4202 as a regular tier 10 medium tank. Now we'll compare the armor first so we can see the difference between these two models, but later we'll compare the guns and mobility with the Centurion Mark 1. So first off, the armor on the tier 8 version is obviously weaker because it's more historically accurate. So yeah, you have less armor at the front than the tier 10 version, as expected. So it is still well sloped at 60 degrees or so. So it's still pretty bouncy, but it is not as thick. So 51mm at the front in comparison to 121mm. So if you have a high resolution internet or high resolution capabilities of your internet, I highly recommend you switching to 1080p because the numbers are kind of small. So whatever. But for now, yeah, the armor is pretty much weaker on the tier 8 version as expected. But also note, the turret is a little bit different. It is more squarelier, if that's a word, on the tier 8 version than the tier 10 version. It's more like a trapezoid on the tier 10 than the tier 8. And it is not as well armored as the tier 10 version. So yeah, this turret might not help you when you go haul down with the tier 8 version. So that's kind of disappointing. Also, the turret ring is 200 millimeters, but it is not as uniform as the tier 10 version. But the good parts is that the cupola is a lot smaller, so you can see that the cupola on top, even though it's less armored at 60-ish millimeters, even though the other one is 200 millimeters, it is a lot smaller, so that's a benefit. Alright, so armor wise, yeah, it doesn't have the same armor as the tier 10 version. Also note, it does have the side armor, space side armor, but the hull armor is the same, so that's a plus. The side of the turret is not the same as the way I predicted in my leak video. So this strip of triangular, whatever you call it, strip is actually different. So side of your turret is not as well armored, and that's kind of sucky in my opinion. So it's only 90 millimeters on the tier 8 version, whereas on the old version it's 200 millimeters. So yeah, it's shaping up pretty badly for the tier 8 version. So armor wise, it's not that good. So alright, so we'll compare the actual FE4202 at tier 8 with the Centurion. What the hell am I comparing with the H35? We're not doing that. So we'll compare with the Centurion. So as you can see, DPM, penetration, and damage is the same, because I don't understand. This tank used the Type B barrel of the 20 pounder. Alright, it is the Type B barrel, not the Type A barrel that's on the Centurion. So as you can see with the Centurion, it's only using the Type A barrel. Now the Type B barrel should be a little bit faster to shoot, with a better rate of fire and better DPM, like it is on the Carnarvon or the Faturian. So yeah, it doesn't get buffed for some reason, so that sucks. You don't carry as much ammo as the Centurion, so that sucks. The shell velocity is the same, so you don't have to lead your shot as much. And this tank doesn't have the accuracy as a sniper like with the Centurion, so that's poopy. Alright, it doesn't have the aim time as well, 0.29 seconds off, so that sucks. Accuracy after shooting also is kind of bad in comparison to the Centurion, but not as much. So 1.05 for turning, 0.00 ish. It's alright, but still not as good as the Centurion. Alright, it has 2 degrees more gun elevation, and the gun depression is the same. The turret traverse is the same, but hull traverse is a little bit faster, so that's good. Power to weight ratio is not as good as the Centurion, so climb hills is pretty rough for this tank. So hill climbing is not good. Top speed is also not as good, so that sucks. But it does have way better terrain resistance than the Centurion, so that's a major plus. So it could go through swamps a little bit better, but climbing hills will be a little bit rough because of the power to weight ratio. It weighs only 3 tons less than the Centurion. It has 10 meters less of view range. So alright. Maximum versus Panzer 30. What? I'm not versus the Panzer 38H. I don't understand. Freaking tank inspector got messed up. But it does have full matchmaking, so it will see tier 10s. And like the final verdict of this tank at tier 8 is that even though you could go hull down, and you should, it's not as strong as the tier 10 version. So basically what surprised me the most is the turret. The turret becomes a lot weaker than the actual turret on the FE4202 at tier 10. Now I did have a historical analysis with my leak video on the actual turret of this tank. So yeah, that kind of disappoints me because the actual turret is a lot stronger. So that sucks. But yeah, you still have to play this tank hull down. And side scraping is still not a bad idea because you have space armor. Now frontal plate is pretty weak, but it is very well sloped. So you might be able to pull off some miracle bounces like this way. So angle your tank like this with side scraping, and you might be able to bounce a few shots with your frontal plate. But if they aim a little bit lower or aim between the drive wheels, you'll get penetrated. So Yeah, and turret is not as strong. So if you're going hull down, like what I'm demonstrating right now, the turret front might be able to bounce a few shots if they land on your cheeks, and your cheeks are 240 millimeters. But if they hit a little bit farther onto your face, like right here, yeah, you will get penetrated. So that sucks. But would I have a matlet like on the Centurion, or would I have like a flat, smooth surface like it is on the FE4202? I would rather you have the matlet, because the matlets, even though they don't have that much armor, you might be able to troll a few shots if they have a higher penetration. So what I mean is that the matlet on the Centurion, even though it's 100 millimeters, 100-ish millimeters, right, and 200 millimeters at the front, you might be able to pull off some bounces with tier 10 guns like the BL10. So you might be able to pull off a few miracle bounces because of the matlet, even though it's 200 millimeters against like 270 millimeters of penetration. So that's what space armor does. It trolls a lot of shots. And the turret front of the Centurion is more reliable because the cheeks are not as weak. So the cheeks will bounce a few shots. So in general, the FE4202 at tier 8, it's a premium tank. Use it to make credits. So that's basically what you can say about it. Play it like a sniper. It's not as mobile, so you cannot brawl with it. And yeah, the engine power is not as good. The armor is not as decent. So I would rather to have it for free, but they're not giving out for free unless you do a mission or some sort. It's still debating what's going on, but for now, this tank is meh, so I wouldn't recommend you buying it. But if you already have a FE4202, it's alright of a mission to get it for free, quote unquote. So, alright. And here we have a comparison between the IS-5 with the IS-6. Now, it is like the WZ-111 with the 112, but let's just compare these two, because I don't want to compare the IS-5 with the WZ-111 because one's Russian and one's Chinese. If you're buying a heavy tank for the Russians, why would you buy one for the Chinese, right? It doesn't make sense. So we'll compare it this way. Now, the armor of these two tanks are pretty good. The IS-6 is pretty hard to crack if angled correctly. So the upper plate is about 160 to 170-ish, alright? So decent frontal plate. Now if you angle it, obviously, it's a lot bouncier. But unangled, it's not as good. And lower plate will troll a few shots because it's about 230 millimeters. So yeah, the lower plate is a lot decent. As on the IS-5, the lower plate is not as good, but still pretty decent, 215-ish. And the upper plate will go from 200 millimeters up to 240-ish, 250-ish. So the armor, in my opinion, is better frontally on the IS-5. So that's a major plus. Now the turret armor is a lot better on the IS-5 because it's more rounded than the IS-6. So as you can see, the IS-6 does have a few weak spots like this cheek right here. Whereas on the IS-5, the cheek is 350 millimeters. So no question. And the cupola is a lot smaller on the IS-5. So there's no middle weak spot, but yeah, alright. So let's compare the other stats. Now what is interesting is that they modified the D25T, the 122mm, from the original gun that's on the IS-6, the same gun, into a modified version which they call the D25T A version. So basically it has better penetration, 221mm instead of 175mm. But you face up to tier 10s now, so that's a major trade-off, I guess. Also note that this tank fires APCR as normal ammunition, with high explosive anti-tank as premium ammo. That's interesting. So yeah, it fires APCR as normal ammo. Alright. So penetration wise, it has a lot better penetration than the IS-6. Way better. So about 50mm more. But the trade-off is you face tier 10s. In my opinion, that's actually worth it, because when you're facing tier 10s, and if you can't manage to penetrate, you get more credits out of it. and it is a premium tank, so shooting higher tiers means more money. So why not? And what is also interesting is that even though you're shooting at higher tiers at tier 10s, you might still also find yourself in top tier games at tier 8, like the IS-6. So it's not a bad trade-off. So I'm fine with it. Alright. So damage is the same, about 400. DPM is only 150 off, so it's not that much. Not that much. Reload time is a little bit slower, but with a good crew, you can go down to 10 seconds or so. So that depends on your crew. What's sucky is that you carry the same amount of ammo. I had to think about this one, but yeah, it is like the IS-8, so it can only carry 30 rounds. So you have to make these shots count. But with this penetration, with the 221 millimeters of penetration, your shots doesn't have to aim for weak spots, a little bit more reliant like it is on the IS-6. So that's actually a little bit better, but you still only have 30 rounds, so you have to make those shots count. And the shell velocity is faster because it's APCR by almost 100%. Holy crap. That's actually pretty fast, so you don't have to lead your shots that much. So that's good. That's really good. Accuracy is the same, 0.44 Russian, so blah. Aim time is a little bit better, so that's good. Accuracy after shooting or turning the vehicle or turret is a little bit worse, but not much, not that much. It's alright. Has 1 less degrees of gun depression, so it's Russian, alright. Turret traverse is the same, hull traverse is the same, so can't complain. It has a little bit better power to weight ratio, so it's a little bit more mobile. That's good. So it weighs a little bit less because it has the same engine, so it weighs a little bit less. Top speed is actually faster by 7 kilometers per hour. Now that might not seem a big difference, but for a heavy tank, that is pretty big in my opinion. So if you're able to go up to 40 kilometers per hour instead of 35 or 30-ish, that's pretty good. So you can keep up with medium tanks or so. So that's good. Hard terrain resistance is a little bit worse than the IS-6, but the rest is the same. So, alright. It has better braking force, so you can stop better if you hit the handbrakes. So that's interesting. Alright. It has 10 meters more view range at 360 meters, but against stuff like the T32 at tier 8, which has about 400 meters of view range, I think. So yeah, the view range is not that good, but it's Russian, so alright. Now it does face up to tier 10s, so that's the main trade-off, but like I said, it's worth it if you shoot at tier 10s. Also note that you might find yourself facing a mouse chin at tier 9, whereas the IS-6 will have a supreme hard time against the mouse chin. This tank will not, because the APCR on the IS-6 only has about 210 or 217 millimeters of penetration. Even if you're shooting premium ammo, you'll find yourself hard to penetrate the mouse chin. Whereas on the IS-5, your premium ammo is heat shells, which has 270 millimeters of penetration. So that could easily go through the sides of a mouse chin. So yeah, it's better against some tier 9s, so you have to keep that in mind when you're playing this tank. So in general, is the IS-5 worth it? Yes. Like I said in my leak video, this tank is worth it. It's pretty decent. Now cost wise, it costs about 12,000 gold, but that's likely placeholder, so that's not set in stone. Whereas the IS-6 cost 200 gold less, but in my opinion, if you're getting a tier 8 Russian heavy tank as a premium, this is not a bad choice. Now, would you get this tank over the T34, which also has normal matchmaking? Ooh. I mean, the T34, in my opinion, is underrated because I love mine, so I like it. So depends on which heavy tank line you play. That's pretty much it. But in my opinion, it's not a bad tank. It's pretty decent. So, alright. And here's the comparison between the T54 model 1945 with the Type 59. Now, rehash from my leak video, this model of the T-54 is pretty goddamn good, in my opinion, at tier 8 because it used the same hull armor as the T-54 at tier 9, and it used a modified turret of the T-44. So the turret is a lot better than the T-44's turret. It has 180 millimeters instead of 120, so it can bounce a few more shots. And the hull armor is pretty goddamn good, so it's a lot better than the Type 59 because it's 120 millimeters instead of 100. So yeah, the turret front is a lot better on the Type 59, but it is still pretty well sloped on the T-54 prototype. So yeah, you will bounce a lot of shots with this turret. Now the cupola, in my opinion, is smaller than the Type 59. So yeah, the cupola is a lot smaller. But the trade-off for the T-54 is that this tank will see tier 10s. So it's an everyday man's Type 59, if you will. Alright, but armor-wise, it's better, in my opinion, than the Type 59. At least on the hull, not about turret. The turret could be the same, but yeah, we have to look at everything, right? So frontal plate is about 180-ish effective, whereas on the Type 59, it's 150. So yeah, way better. Lower plate is about 200 and 210. So alright, but yeah, it's not a bad tank. Side armor is about 90. Side armor on the Type 59 is about 80. So side armor is better. Side of the turret is 168, 160-ish, slope upwards, and 120-ish on the T-54. So yeah, it's a debate which tank is better. The Type 59 has better turret, but the T-54, I don't get confused, has better hull armor. So that's a trade-off. But yeah, you cannot buy the Type 59 from the gift shop, whereas you can buy this tank from the gift shop any time of the day. So yeah, let's see the other stats. Alright, so as we can see, the penetration is only 6 millimeters off from the Type 59, so not that bad. DPM, however, is a little bit better by 133, so alright. Reloads a little bit faster, alright. The shell travels 5 meters less per second, so not that bad. It has a little bit more accuracy, but that's alright. 0.01 more or less accuracy. Alright. Aim time is a lot better. Alright. Accuracy while turning the turret is better, but the rest is mediocre, about the same. So alright. Has 1 degree less gun depression than the Type 59. That's interesting. Alright. It has better power to weight ratio by 0.2, so it's a little bit better. It doesn't turn as fast, so that's not as good. Top speed is not as good. Oh my gosh. Okay, top speed is a little bit underwhelming. Alright, reverse is 2 kilometers per hour slower. Terrain resistance is a little bit worse on hard and medium, but not on soft. So alright, it can brake a little bit better, but that's not much. Has the same health and weighs less than the Type 59. It has the same view range, but a better radio. The radio doesn't mean that much. So yeah, it does face tier 10s, whereas the Type 59 face only tier 9s. So alright. So would you get the T-54 first prototype? Now, to be fair, you cannot compare this tank with the Type 59 by itself because the Type 59 is not available to everybody. So that's kind of not fair. So we have to compare it with something like the T-44 or the T-34-2 or something like that. So more available tanks. So where the hell is the T-44? So as you can see, if comparing with the T-44, we have the same amount of penetration. Why the hell are you using this derpy gun? Not use the 122, please. That's kind of crappy. So if it's using the same gun on the T-44, the 100mm, has the same penetration, same damage, same DPM, it carries 22 rounds less. Oh, I did not notice this part. It can only carry 34 rounds. Ooh, that just might change my decision making. So, alright. It's not as good accuracy as the T-44. Aim time is not as good. Gun depression is not as good. Chassis traverse is not as good. Turret traverse is not as good. Mobility is not as good. Holy crap. That's way off. That's like 20.03 comparison to 14.65. That is big. That is pretty big. Yeah, okay. Top speed is not as good. Oh man. I'm changing my decision now. So, should I compare this thing to the Super Pershing? I think I should. Health is the same. So, let's compare with the Super Pershing. Because it looks like it has a lot of armor, but it moves kind of slowly. So, we'll compare it with the Super Pershing. So, if we're comparing with the Super Pershing, we have 5 more millimeters of penetration, more damage, better DPM. Alright. We don't carry as much shells, so that's not good. The shells fly a little bit slower. Accuracy is the same. Aim time is worse. Less gun depression, obviously, against Americans. Turret traverse is slower. A lot faster, what I'm talking about. It's only 25 degrees on the Super Pershing. That sucks. Chassis traverse is 10 degrees faster. Alright. Engine power is way better. Top speed is way better. Hull traverse is better. Power to weight ratio is better. Terrain resistance is better. Fuel range is not as good by 10 meters. And radio range is whatever. However, the Super Pershing does not see tier 10s, so that's a trade-off. Now, basically, the T-54 first prototype is like a hybrid of a Super Pershing with a T-44. So, yeah. At first thought, I think this tank was just as good as the Type 59, but looking at these stats more carefully and with better comparisons, man, that 34 rounds you can carry hampers this tank because it's like playing IS-6, but your gun does only 250 damage instead of 400 damage per shot. So, yeah, it's hard to squeeze out damage with this tank. So you might find yourself running low on shells like the IS-6. So, is it worth getting? Oh man, that's a hard question. I would rather you spend the money on the IS-5 than this tank. That's all I can say about it. It does have the armor. No doubt. It has the armor, alright? It's just, it can only carry 34 rounds. The accuracy of the gun is not that good. The penetration is also not that good. You might find yourself in tier 10 matches where the accuracy is kind of important as well as the penetration. So, as well as the mobility if you're playing a medium tank. Yeah, I would probably skip it and save the money for the IS-5. That's my opinion about it. But yeah, 34 rounds, that's a kicker. So it's a slower version of the T-44 with the Super Pershing's-esque armor. So, And here is advanced analysis of the Sherman Improved. Now, I don't know if you can compare this tank with the normal Sherman because the normal Sherman gets a 76mm gun. Whereas on the Sherman Improved, it gets the historically accurate 75mm gun on normal Shermans. So I'll probably compare this tank with something like the Ram 2 or the T-14, one of which, but armor wise, it has about the same armor on the upper plate. So the upper portion of the hull is 51mm, the same as on the Sherman. So it's actually a little bit better effective on the Sherman than on the Sherman Improved. So that's interesting, by 10mm. Alright, the lower plate or the medium plate, whatever you call this part, is about 60ish to 90ish millimeters, whereas on the Sherman is 50ish. So the lower plate is a little bit better, but that's not much. Alright, the turret front, it doesn't have as big of a mantlet, so the mantlet cannot protect you. The flat panel around the mantlet is about 85 millimeters, whereas the cheeks of the Sherman is about 100 millimeters, with the mantlet about 90-ish. So yeah, the Sherman looks kinda better. So yeah. Alright, that's interesting. Side armor is 45 in comparison to 38. Side of the turret is not as well armored, 51 in comparison to 64. Rear of the hull is 51 with 38 on the normal Sherman, and back of the turret is 64. And the back of the turret on the Improved is 51. So armor, in my opinion, is a little bit better on the Sherman, because the normal Sherman, because the turret has a mantlet and it has a lot of armor behind it. Whereas on the Improved version, it does have 10 millimeters more, but it's a bigger area to get hit, and the mantlet is not as big. So yeah, the Improved kind of looks a little bit bigger with more areas to get hit, so that sucks. Alright, so it looks like the other stats. So it does see tier 7s. I have to get that fact straight. It does see tier 7s, so that sucks. Penetration is not as good as the normal Sherman by 36 millimeters. Holy crap, that's a lot. Damage is not as good by 5. DPM is a little bit better, but you cannot penetrate, so if you cannot penetrate, you cannot do damage. So what's the point? It carries 7 more rounds. Alright, it fires pretty slowly at 619, Rey Mysterio. Alright, accuracy is not as good, but it's not that bad. 0.01. Alright, aim time is a little bit better. Accuracy is better. Alright, has 2 less degrees of gun depression, so that's interesting. I never knew the Sherman had 12 degrees gun depression, so alright. Turret traverse is not as good. Hull traverse is also not as good, but it does have a better engine, better power to weight ratio. Top speed is faster by 8 kilometers per hour. Turn resistance is the same, a little bit worse on soft, but that's alright. It has 20 more health. That's a kicker. That's a very big kicker, because normal premium tanks, mediums at tier 5, has about 600 health. So we'll compare this with something like the Ram 2 or the T25, but for now it has very low health, so that sucks. View range is the same. Radio range is alright, 50 meters less. It does see tier 7s, so that's a kick. That's a very big kicker. It weighs a little bit more, so you can ram stuff versus Centurion. No, versus, not versus the Centurion. What are you talking about? But yeah, it's the gun. The gun has no penetration, and it sees up to tier 7, so that's a big kicker. Now let's compare something with like the Ram 2. What the hell is the Ram 2? So this is the other premium tank, medium, for the Americans at tier 5. So we can see the penetration is not as good by 13 millimeters. It does do more damage. DPM is not as good as the Ram 2, because the Ram 2 has a pea shooter and pump out a lot of shots, and the Ram 2 carries less rounds. Alright, so more potential damage output for the Sherman Improved. Accuracy is not as good. Aim time is better. Gun depression is better. It has only 7.5 degrees of gun depression on the Ram 2. That's interesting. Better gun elevation, better traverse. Alright, better top speed. Alright, better everything, better terrain resistance other than soft. Alright, it doesn't have the 610 health that's on the Ram 2, so that's a very big kicker. And it has 40 more meters of view range, but it does see tier 7s, whereas on the Ram 2 you only see tier 6, I believe. No, you can see tier 7s on the Ram 2. Huh. Which premium tank at tier 5 does not see Ram tier 7s? Ram 2 is not one. The T14, that's the one I'm thinking about. So let's compare it with the T14, since it is the same gun. Hope I'm not boring you guys, because it's a lot of stats and a lot of comparisons. So penetration is... I thought it was the same goddamn gun. No, I'm comparing the Ram 2 with the T14. I'm a dumbass. Shit. Fuck. Alright, be patient. Science is a patient process. It's 99.9% boring, but the other percent is worth it. Where the hell is the Sherman Improved? There it is. So we'll compare these two. Finally. Alright, so penetration is the same. Damage is the same. DPM is not as good. So, blah. Alright. It carries a lot more ammo by 7. What am I talking about? Alright. It has better accuracy. That's good. Worse aim time, but not that much. Better accuracy when turning. Better turret traverse. Way better. Better chassis traverse. Alright. Chassis, whatever, guys, come on. Gun depression, gun elevation is the same. It's better power to weight ratio, better top speed, better view range, and doesn't see tier 7s instead of tier 6s with the T14. So it is the same gun, but the T14 has armor on the front. So basically, the armor at the front is like the Sherman Improved. 81mm effective on the upper plate, but about 102mm on the lower plate, and the turret is pretty strong. So, pretty strong, like the Sherman's turret. So, basically, it's like playing the T14 with a little bit less armor, but faster mobility. But you do see tier 7s now. So that's the Sherman Improved, so to speak. Is it worth it? The health. It has only 480 health. Normal premium tier 5s or premium tier 5 medium tanks has about 600 health, like the Ram 2 and the T25. What about the Matilda 4? I wonder. You can see the... What the hell is the other ones? Let's look at the Chinook. That's a tier 5. Huh. It has the same health as the Chinook. That sucks. I feel sorry for the Chinook drivers. You got cheated. The health is not that much. Against the Matilda Black Prince, yeah, not as much health. Alright. Against like the T25. Yeah, not as much health. Against something like... What else? What else can... Matilda 4. Yep. Oh, what the frick. Yeah, not as much health. So, it's like playing the Chinook. So let's compare the Chinook. I'm surprised the Chinook does not have 600 health. But against the Chinook, you have less penetration. Holy crap. Less damage per shot. A little bit better DPM. You carry a little bit more ammo, but the Chinook does more damage, so that evens out. The Chinook has more accuracy, whoo, but less aim time, or more aim time, but crappier gun depression and gun elevation with no armor. So this tank has better mobility in all aspects other than terrain resistance and better view range. 370 meters. That's pretty good. So yeah, the Chinook plays like a sniper. It doesn't have armor at the front, but it is mostly the same as the Sherman Improved with about 51mm at the front instead of 80ish. So the turret is also not as strong, but what the hell on this tank is 150 behind the gun? Alright, so it's like a souped up version of a Chinook with less penetration, I guess. Is it worth your money? No. No, it's not worth it. I would recommend you buy a T14 instead of this tank, because the T14 actually has space armor and a good turret, even though it has the same gun. But it does get preferential matchmaking. So if you have the money, buy the T14. If not, don't buy this tank. So final verdict. Alright. And finally, let's do a comparison between the R35 that I mentioned yesterday with the Hotchkiss H35 in the game. Now, I never noticed this before, but you can actually get the Hotchkiss H35 normally, but I never played it because I don't like to play low tiers. But somehow this tank has better armor than the R35 while using the same gun. So if you have the Panzer 38H, which is the premium tier 2 German medium tank, a lot of people consider this tank as the mouse of tier 2 because of the armor. It has 40mm at the front and the sides and the rear. So average penetration of tier 2 guns is about 41mm. So this is the mouse of tier 2. It also has a space armor ass tail at the back. Alright. But yeah, this tank is very hard to penetrate normally against tier 2s. But tier 3s, tier 4s would not have a problem. So it doesn't see tier 4s. It only sees tier 3s. So that's good. But I stumbled across the H35 yesterday while browsing the tank inspector, and this tank has the same armor as the R35, if not better. So yeah, would you rather get the new R35 when it comes out or the Hotchkiss H35? The gun's the same, so gun's not that good, and it is not as good as the Panzer version, the German version. So let's look at the stats. Alright, so let's look at the big stats first. So hit points wise, it has 10 more hit points on the Renault. So alright, engine power is the same. Okay, power to weight ratio is not as good on the Renault because it weighs heavier. So alright, chassis traverse, I like to say chassis, but I don't know why, is the same. Top speed is not as good. Reverse is only 1 km faster, so you can see here. And gun depression, we'll look at that later, but view range is the same. Radio range is not as good. Hull armor is 40 at the front, 40 at the sides, 35 at the rear. Whereas on the Hotchkiss, it's 40 at the front, 40 at the sides, 40 at the rear. So ass armor is better. Turret armor is the same, so no comparison. Alright, it is the same turret, looks like. So armor is pretty much similar. Pretty much. Terrain resistance is the same. That's interesting. Alright, so mostly everything is the same. Turret traverse is the same. Alright, let's look at the gun depression and other stuff. So gun characteristics. It has the same penetration, same damage. DPM is the same. Alright. Reload's the same, obviously. Rate of fire is the same. Accuracy is the same, 0.48, which is crap. Aim time is the same. Gun depression, however, is 16 degrees instead of 10 degrees, surprisingly. Why can't you turn? It's the same turret. Shouldn't you be able to turn this gun 16 degrees on this tank? Oh, it's likely this driver hatch compartment, I guess. Yeah, there's only a driver and commander. The commander sits up here, the driver sits here. So the driver is fucking everything up. So it has better gun depression and gun elevation. Yeah, gun elevation is also crap. So it has better gun depression and gun elevation. But other than that, the rest of the characteristics is the same. So it has a little bit better mobility on the Hotchkiss, but it doesn't have the gun depression. Fuck it, it's tier 2. What am I debating about? It's tier 2. So if you cannot wait for the Renault 35 R35, not 35T, the Renault R35 slap. If you cannot wait for this tank, the R35, play with the Hotchkiss H35. It's the same goddamn tank. except it's a little bit bigger with less gun depression, but armor is pretty much the same. So yeah, play with the Hotchkiss if you're tired of waiting, but there's not that important. The renowned R35. So I was getting hyped for no reason. That sucks. Alright, but tier 2, who cares? Just play the T18 and you'll dominate crap. Just fire high explosive anti-tank with the tier 2 tank. God, you'll waste so much money, but it's worth it. So it's and the final verdict of these tanks, after I shed some light on them from this comparison episode of Leaked, is that some of them are pretty disappointing, like the FV4202. Now, the turret is not as strong as I predicted, so that sucks. And the hull armor I already know is kind of bad, but it doesn't have the mobility, doesn't have the turret now, and you cannot play this tank like a hull down sniper, so that sucks. The T-54 model 1945 is debatable. It's not as fast, but originally I thought about it like that, but after comparing it with something like the T-44 or the Type 59, more detailed, I would prefer you buy the IS-5 instead of the T-54. So the IS-5 looks pretty decent as a tier 8 premium heavy tank, so it's not a bad deal. Whereas the T-54 and the FV4202, yeah, you could skip it. And the Sherman Improved is not as good. So yeah, just buy the T14 instead of the Sherman Improved. And about the renowned R35, if you cannot wait, play with the Hotchkiss H35. You'll be the same. You'll be good. So thank you guys for watching this episode. It's kind of long, so hopefully you did not watch the entirety of everything, because that's crazy, and I applaud you if you did. But it's mostly more detailed analysis about these tanks, and I'll probably save up gold for the IS-5, for the M56 Scorpion, for the Krumpsteier Waffenträger, and that's pretty much it. So these 3 tanks is the best choice out of the premium shops, or out of these tanks introduced. So the rest of these, you could skip it. So thank you guys for watching this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. It's kind of long, but yeah, you made it, so congrats. So leave a comment below on what you think about these tanks after I shed some light on them, so to speak. And yeah, rate this video if you can. That always help me out a lot. And I'll try to post up more leak info when it comes out, because there's no leak stuff coming out today, other than the supposed test time for the physics, or new motion-based physics. So we'll wait for that. But I'll probably do the 9.6 mod video Thursday or so, after I play around with tweaking it. So it's going to be the same as the 9.5, because I generally use the same layout with the mods, as well as the sound mods with gnome fodders or Craig's Treblers gun sounds / turret sound / engine sounds. So it's going to be the same layout, but for now I'll be patient. So thank you guys for watching this episode as always, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.